Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we are making a laptop case. How cool is this? So it kind of looks like an envelope. We're going to use Velcro to close it. There's a nice large pouch in there to hold our laptop. I just so happen to have a laptop right here, which it fits in here perfectly. And there we go. We're good to go. I'm good to take this on the go, travel, or just keep it safe when I'm not using it. So in this tutorial, we are going to go over how to make this laptop case. You can use this tutorial to make a case for any size laptop. I teach you the math that you'll need to figure out the dimensions for your specific laptop. These make awesome birthday gifts, Christmas gifts, so save this, keep this in mind for, you know, those people that you're not sure what to get them. This is a really fun handmade option to make for them. You can get fabric from their favorite TV show or favorite movie or their favorite colors and make them something special that they'll always think of you whenever they see it. So let's jump right into the tutorial. Okay. I don't know about you, but I like to learn with visual aids. So what we are going to do is we're going to be making a laptop case that looks very similar to this little envelope. So when we make it, it's at first going to look like something like this. And then we'll be doing some folding and stitching to create an actual little pocket where the laptop will go in, like that. So I thought this would kind of help explain the math for those of you that have a different size laptop, or if you want to use this to create an iPad case or a tablet case, or, you know, you could make one for a book. You could really do it for anything that you want to keep. You could even make just a little clutch bag. I made a little clutch bag several months ago for a tutorial on my blog. I can link that down below if you want to know how to make this cute little thing. I love it. It's very cute, very pretty, and you can keep all kinds of stuff in there. Let's talk math. So for my example, I'm going to be making a cover for my MacBook Air. This is the 13-inch edition. I have just like a little plastic case on here basically to protect the surface, but if I were to take this out to go work at a coffee shop, or if I was traveling with this, I would not just trust this to keep my laptop safe. I want it to be padded and protected because laptops are not cheap and we want to protect those, right? First, we need to know the dimensions of the laptop. So the ones that we're going to be focusing are on the height of the laptop and the width. So this laptop measures 8.5 by 12 inches. Okay. And this is a very thin laptop. It's only about a 1/2 inch thick. So we'll discuss that later, but just know if you have a thicker laptop, you're going to have to add a little bit more give into the finished size, but we will get there. I know my dimensions for my laptop. Now let's break out the visual aid. So this section right here, that is the dimensions of the laptop. So imagine with me that this is a to scale size case. This would be 8.5 by 12. But if we made it 8.5 by 12, it would be very hard to squeeze it in here. So I'm actually going to add 1 inch to both of those dimensions. And what that's going to do is that's going to give me a little wiggle room on the side and the bottom and top. But it's also going to give me that give in the 1/2 inch thickness of the laptop. I want my case to be quite snug. I don't want it to be wiggling around in there. If you want a little more space, you can add another 1/2 inch to 1 inch to those dimensions. So my finished piece, I actually want it to measure 9.5 by 13. So now that we know what size the actual pocket of the case is going to be, we can figure out how large to make our large piece. So what we're going to do is we're going to multiply this section by 2. So remember, ours was 9.5 by 13. 13, we're going to keep that, but the 9.5, we're going to multiply that by 2. So that comes out to 19 inches. So that covers the back and the front of the case. Then we are going to add 6 inches to that total, which will give us 25. So that means we're going to have a piece that is 25 inches high by 13 inches wide. And that is how we are going to make our envelope part of our laptop case. So I'm going to go ahead and get going on the tutorial. I hope the math made sense. The materials that we are using are 7 Jellyroll strips, half a yard of just some coordinating fabric for the lining, some sew-in Velcro, some heat and bond. This is the Craft Extra Firm, a marking tool, and a hero marker for my quilting. So here I'm just showing we have our Jellyroll strips. I'm going to be sewing them all together. So I'll just line them up like that and then sew down the long side. So here's just a really quick video of me sewing them together. And I'm using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. There it is. It already looks beautiful. I love these fabrics. Now we're going to press all of our seams just to one side so they all lay flat. This is after I've pressed. I want you to see the seams laying flat there. Now we're going to trim the side. I just want a nice straight edge there. So got my ruler and my rotary cutter, and I'm just going to trim off that excess little piece at the end of all the strips. Get those out of the way. Now I'm going to measure this out. Since I want my finished piece to be 25 inches wide, I am going to actually cut this piece at 26 inches. So that's going to give me plenty of seam allowance for when I am sewing everything together. So I'm just getting this all lined up so I can cut it at 26 inches. And with the Jellyroll strips, the width of this is going to be about 14.5 inches. So, and that's perfect. That's what we want. We want a little extra so when we go to trim after we've quilted, it is enough. So here I've just got some extra batting from another project, and I'm going to be using this for my batting for the actual quilting process. And I'm going to be using 2 layers of batting. So this is going to make my laptop case nice and padded so it'll actually protect my laptop. So here I just layered everything up. We've just got those Jellyroll strips and 2 layers of batting. You don't need a backing for this. And here I'm just placing a few pins in the layers just to keep everything together while I quilt it. So I'm going to use my ruler and my handy dandy hero marker. As you can see, I am going to be lining up the 45-degree angle mark of my ruler with the straight edge of the Jellyroll here at the bottom. And that's going to help me create beautiful 45-degree angle straight lines here with my hair marker. The hair marker is really great for quilting because, especially for straight line quilting, because you can create these really subtle creases in the quilt and you're not having to use up ink with anything, and I just really love it. So I always link a hero marker down in the description box below because I believe it's one of the greatest tools a quilter can have, honestly. So here I am just quilting. I'm just quilting along those lines that I had created with the hero marker and getting that finished. It looks so good. Look how beautiful that looks. And it's very professional looking, and I did that very quickly. So now I'm just going to trim up the edges. I'm going to get all that excess batting off just so it's nice and square. Now it's time to cut the point of our envelope. So I'm just showing you here, that's what we're doing. So I'm gonna grab my marking pen and I'm gonna take that and I'm going to mark the center of our rectangle here. So I'm just using my ruler to find the 7-inch mark. Actually 7 inch and a quarter. So we're just marking the center, so no matter what size you make, you're gonna mark in the center. Then we're gonna use that mark and we're gonna use, again, our 45-degree angle mark on our ruler. And we're going to line that mark, see I'm showing you the line here, and we're gonna line that up with the edge of the quilt. And then we also want to line up the edge with that center mark, and that's how we know where to cut. And then we make the dreaded cut. There it is. Beautiful. Save that for later. You could use something with that. Then we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So line up that 45-degree line on the edge of the quilt and line up the edge of the ruler with that center point. And now we cut. And this is giving us perfect 45-degree angles, so it's going to look really great when it's done. Look how cool that looks. So here, this is what it'll look like so far. This is before we have put in the lining. You can already see how cute this is going to be when it's done. Now we're going to take our lining and our Heat and Bond extra firm craft iron-on fusible batting, and I'm just using our quilt that we just made, and I'm just using it as a template to cut out my lining, trimming it up, and there, now it's the perfect size. We want it to be the exact same size as our quilt. And then I'm just doing the same thing with cutting the interfacing. This is going to give the lining some structure, and I really like using it. This stuff is machine washable, it's not going to come out. So you want to make sure that you iron on the shiny side down on the fabric, or else you'll get glue stuck all over your iron. And here I'm just showing you, I kind of had to be creative with adding pieces of the lining because I didn't have quite enough to do a full piece with the fusible interfacing. But here, now we are going to figure out our placement for our Velcro. So we want to put our lining and our outside part wrong sides together. So this is what it's going to look like when it's done. We just don't have the pieces sewn together yet. So I'm placing the laptop inside to kind of figure out where I want to fold the flap down. So now I'm grabbing my Velcro. I'm using 5/8 inch Velcro, that's sewn Velcro. So here I'm just kind of deciding where I want to place it, because you want the pieces to line up for sure. So I'm just using 3-inch long strips here. You could also use snaps as for the closure. You could use a button. You could use multiple pieces of Velcro. There's all kinds of different closures that you can use, but I just like the idea of Velcro because if I ever get some kind of spill or something on this laptop case, I can easily machine wash it, no problem. And there's not going to be any metal pieces that could potentially damage my laptop. So yeah, so here I'm figuring out the placement on the flap first. That placement's a little bit more important. So here I'm just going to take a pin and I'm going to pin it in. Your placement might be a little bit different, that's totally fine. Make sure when you're pinning it in, you're just pinning it into the lining piece. So there I have that, and then I'm going to close it, and I'm going to figure out the perfect placement for the other one. And then here I'm placing a pin into this one as well and making sure I only pin into the quilted portion. And there, now I have my Velcro placed perfectly. Now we're just gonna stitch all the way around the Velcro. Make sure you backstitch. I did quite a bit of backstitching on it just because I want to make sure that the Velcro stays in place for sure. So there's one piece, and then I'm doing the other. I especially did backstitching on the shorter edges just to make sure they don't come up over time. So now that we have that done, now it's time to sew the pieces together. So we're going to place both pieces right sides together, and then I'm just going to stitch all the way around the perimeter of the piece, but I'm going to leave an opening. You should leave an opening of about 4 inches, and that's going to help us when we turn it right side out. So here I'm just sewing the pieces together. I'm using about a 3/8 inch seam allowance. It's a little bit larger than a 1/4 of an inch. I just wanted to make sure that I had a really good seam allowance for this piece. So there we can see where I stopped and started my stitches. So we have an opening there that we are going to use to pull the piece out. Before we pull it out, we're going to cut the corners. So I'm going to cut all the corners that are on this piece, and that's just going to help when we're turning the piece right side out. It's going to help the corners not be so bulky. So it's a small detail, but it does make a big difference really when you're creating something like this. So I'm just snipping those real quick, and now I found my opening, and now's the fun part of pulling it through. As you can see, I made my opening a little too small. It was like 2.5, 3 inches wide. This was a little tough to pull through. So that's why I say use a 4-inch opening. It'll be a little bit easier to turn it right side out. Just take it nice and slow. You don't want to do any jerking motions to try to pull it out because you could rip the seams, and that's no fun to do. So here we're turning it out. Then once it's all turned out, then I just go in with my finger and kind of poke out the corners. You could also use a pen or a chopstick to do that. Just make sure that you're not jabbing so you break through the seam. But now I just go along the seam and I kind of roll it with my fingers, and that helps with the next step, which is top stitching. And we are almost done here. So yeah, I just go along the seam. I also take it over to the ironing board and I press along the seam just to help them lay really flat. This helps give you a really nice professional looking finish. And it only takes a couple of minutes, so really you really don't want to skip this step. I mean, you can if you want to, but it really does make a difference in cutting down on bulky seams, and it helps your sewing machine too, because you are going to be stitching through some pretty thick seams. So I'm just kind of rolling out those seams so they lay flat. And then when you get to your opening, you want to make sure that you press all of those edges on the inside. So I'm just kind of using my fingers to roll them in, because you don't want raw edges exposed when you're finished. And then I'm just pressing that flat so it'll be easier to sew when I take it to my sewing machine. We're just going to finish up pressing that. Pressing, ironing, you can call it whatever you want. There's no judgment here. Alright, I'm doing a little extra pressing just for good measure, right? Okay, now I'm at the sewing machine, and we are going to, first I want to stitch the opening shut, and I'm going to give it extra stitches just to make sure that it doesn't pop open. I'm just going to stitch through. Don't forget to back stitch, just to close up that opening. So that is done. Now we're going to fold our laptop case and fold it where we want it to be closed. So that's the placement that I've chosen. And now we are going to do what is called top stitching, which is stitching about a quarter or an eighth of an inch away from the edge. And I wanted to show you how fast I stitch this part. Look how slow I'm going, because I'm stitching through a lot of layers here, so you want to take it really slow. I sped it up just so, you know, you didn't have to sit through 20 minutes of me stitching extremely slow. But yeah, you want to take this slow and then turn and top stitch the flap. That gives it a really nice finished look. Back stitch, and then look at that. It's done. It's so cute. Now we got to test it out, right? Let's see, does it fit? Yay! Look, it fits in there perfectly. This was such a fun project to make. Pretty cool. Thank you guys so much for watching. And if you found this valuable, please like and subscribe, and I will see you again later. Bye!